Welcome to the LegalTube podcast, presented by LawyerLocate.ca. Join us as we explore the latest trends, strategies, and tools for promoting your legal practice in the digital age. Hosted by Mark Robbins, CEO of LawyerLocate.ca, LegalTube, and Digital MSpace, where we're all about legal marketing online for Canadian lawyers. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast today. Today, we are honored to have as our guest BC lawyer, Kyla Lee, who is known in the legal community as the IRP lawyer. Kyla is the author of An Immediate Roadside Prohibitions in Western Canada, the leading textbook in defending 90-day roadside prohibitions. Kyla made history in British Columbia as the first successful lawyer to defend an IRP appeal at the Supreme Court of Canada. She's also was awarded the Badass of the Year award in 2019 by the DUI Defense Lawyers Association. On a personal note, she is a gin connoisseur and has helped to develop a gin in honor of her mother. Please welcome to the podcast, Kyla Lee.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. So tell us a little bit about your legal background. You're with Acumen Law in Vancouver, correct?
Yes, I work at Acumen in Vancouver, and I've worked there my entire career. I got hired as a summer student in my second year of law school and basically never left. I basically worked on a slow plan to take over.
That's very good. Excellent. Well, it's funny because I mentioned in our green room, Paul Trushenko, who runs your firm, was actually one of the original members of LawyerLocate.ca 23 years ago. That was created by Natalie Waddell. And he had been with us for many, many years, but I honestly think that he outgrew the need for referrals and for that type of presence. Although next time you talk to him, remind him that it never hurts to have as many options online that you can have.
I'll give him the elbow nudge.
So I'm interested in your practice that you really focus on DUI, and you focus, BC is somewhat unique in how their DUI laws are. I'm originally from Ontario. I was actually a retired private investigator for 30 odd years. So I did all my work in Ontario, but have recently moved to Alberta, and the Alberta laws are also very different than Ontario, as is BC. So talk to us a little bit about kind of what you're targeting and what your goals are with your practice.
Well, there's a couple things that I have as goals. Number one, I think my biggest goal right now is just to educate the public, because I've found, with the way that we've decriminalized drunk driving in British Columbia, so many people are getting these DUIs, but they don't know anything about interacting with the legal system. And a lot of people don't understand their rights and their obligations. So I feel like this sense of responsibility, because I see the patterns of what people don't know and what they don't understand, to educate them so that they don't find themselves making mistakes that can actually be very costly. That's probably my biggest goal. My second biggest goal is to try and find as many defenses as possible for my clients in a system that really constrains the defenses.
Correct. So, and it's funny you touch on wanting to educate. So I'm going to point out to those who don't know that you are probably a preeminent Canadian legal influencer on your area of specialty. You're on every platform that I can think of. I know I try to follow you on as many platforms as I can find you on. My current favorite, like everybody else, is TikTok because it's easy. How did you come to, that's a big jump from, I think, because my experience with lawyers, it's a big jump from, practicing law. And you mentioned like being in a courtroom and having to stand up in public. And that's one thing, but I find lawyers, my experience has been, you put a camera in front of them and all of a sudden everything changes. It's like they become this. I said, I've seen lawyers that have given eloquent submissions and closing arguments. And they'll say, okay, well, I want to do this little video of you, introduce yourself to the public, and they freeze. So how did you get there?
I always had a big background in theater. I grew up with a very great mentor in my church where I grew up, who we did a drama program in our church, and he would cast me in everything. And I did all the drama stuff at my high school and even into my undergrad. So I've always just sort of had the flair for dramatic and not been afraid of the stage or anything like that. And then after I sort of transitioned out of theater, I went into modeling, which is pretty much the same thing. You're just in front of a camera, not worried about looking stupid and trying to do your best. So I don't know. I guess it's always just come really naturally for me. And I also, when I was modeling, a lot of modeling is self-promotion. And so I got really used to developing a social media presence, doing a lot of online networking, promoting myself to try and get cast for things. So that also was a skill I developed before going into law that I brought into law with me.
Now, have you seen over the years of you doing the social media presentations and it being an influencer, do the metrics support that it's driving traffic to you and or your firm?
Oh, absolutely. I get people calling me every single day who saw a TikTok that I did and they got a speeding ticket and they want to talk to me, or their friend follows me on Twitter and they got a DUI and they're calling me. So it's a really great source of referrals for new business. It's also been really good at getting my face out there in more of the traditional media senses, because I might comment on a case, a legal issue in a TikTok video or on a Twitter post or on a thread, and then I'll get a phone call from the news station who wants to do an interview because they know that I have something sort of interesting to say about the issue.
Right. And because my past experience with Paul, I know Paul used to be very active in kind of traditional social media, which is basically the typewritten word, Twitter and those platforms. But now I've started to notice Paul is starting to appear in front of camera quite frequently on the different platforms. Did that come indirectly from you, or was it a direct kind of influence on him to say, hey, it's time for you to step out?
Um, it's kind of my fault, so I apologize to everybody who's had false content. No, he when I started working for him, he actually told me to like close down my social media accounts, to not be as active on social media. And I followed that advice for as long as it took me to get hired back for a full articling position. When I was like, I'm going to do what I want. I don't think I'm going to get fired at this point. And so I started doing it and it started having benefits for the firm. And I said, look, you've got to do this too. You've got to get into this. So, it took him a long time to get into TikTok, just because I think he's been a little bit camera shy in the last several years. But now that he's into it, he's making videos every day. He's really enjoying it, and he's seeing the same thing. People coming to him because they saw him on social media, and he's built this brand on social media as a trusted person that you can go to for advice. That's also relatable, which is what he is.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm obviously a big proponent. That's the business we're in here with LegalTube, with the podcast, but LegalTube also is a production company for social media productions. Obviously everything feeds Lawyer Locate, because Lawyer Locate is our sole purpose in life is legal marketing in Canada. That's what was created 23 years ago. We're always kind of dumbfounded when we celebrate each year going, how did we stay online this long? Because it's pretty amazing for Natalie Waddell, who created this company and is kind of the real backbone of it to keep this thing going. And it took time for even us to realize to break out into these areas, because I remember I think we mentioned Stuart Rudner at Rudner Law, Employment Law, and we do all of his social media from his website to everything. So we're kind of the one-stop shop for him. I've known Stuart for over 25 years, and I know when TikTok first came around, he was the first one to bring it to my attention. I hadn't really noticed it, which is unusual for me. And I kind of watched it, and we had a meeting. I said, I'm not sure. I'm just, let me play with it for a little bit before you get out there. And I started doing some stuff just on I have an account that's called Mark from Canmore, just to play on the comedy. So, and it was easier for me to do some small stuff that way and not really have it business related. And I started to get response, and it was all positive response, because I was still gun shy because of what happened to Twitter. And a lot of people, I don't care what your politics are, as we know, are running away from Twitter. I mean, I closed my account literally a month after Elon Musk bought it. I just closed it and got all my data and removed it. But going back to TikTok, so when we got into TikTok, I saw what it was and I said, this is where it's going. I mean, I don't mean this as an insult to the public, but the attention span is that of less than 60 seconds. And that's not great. I know Natalie and I debate this all the time. But then I saw and I said, you know what? Here's an avenue for my clients to be more personal, to be more relaxed, and to really show who you are, and in an easier way to give some information and not get tied into the, oh, I'm retained hook. That was kind of the thing that got me going on TikTok. What was your experience?
For me, it was, I guess it was the pandemic and I was really bored. Because, we didn't have court. I still had IRP hearings, but people weren't going out and drinking and driving. So there wasn't a
Right.
lot to do. And I thought, okay, well, let's check out this social media app that what I understood was just about, dancing and lip syncing. And that's kind of how I started. I didn't dance because I can't dance. I'm terrible at it.
Right.
But I did a lot of lip syncing videos and they started to perform really well. And then as the app transitioned towards more like short form content with information, I was like, okay, this is where I can thrive on here, because I can pick up a camera and film myself saying 60 seconds about a speeding ticket, without any rehearsal. And I love about TikTok that it's really TikTok. It's really, it's early.
I know.
It's really come as you are. So, I make videos at like 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday when I haven't had a shower or brushed my hair. I'm like still in my messy clothes that I slept in. And people don't care. Sometimes those
No.
videos get, tens of thousands of views because people don't care that they don't want you to put on airs. They just want you to be who you are.
Exactly. And that's a tough one from my side of the coin, talking to a lawyer, to explain to a lawyer that no, they don't want to see you in your Hugo Boss suit. They're not that's not going to influence anybody to consider retaining you. If anything, in some ways, that could be perceived as a negative because, oh, he's got a Hugo Boss, he's got a Porsche. I mean, that goes back to old school ways. I had a lot of medium-sized, large law firms when I was an investigator. And I can remember senior partners telling, up and coming junior associates, don't go out and buy that expensive car. Yeah, you're getting the money now, you're making decent money, you're into six figures. Stay real, or you're going to lose clients because people are terrified. Oh, yeah, I'm going to pay for that brand new Porsche or that brand new Mercedes. So your TikTok's what we've talked about. Now, you're on most every platform now?
I think I'm on everything. I have a Mastodon account, but I don't really use it. I haven't given up on Twitter, but I'm not very active on there anymore. But yeah, I'm on everything. I try.
And you're talking about Twitter. So you're on the new Twitter alternate
Uh,
platform?
yes, I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on
Right.
Threads. I'm probably most active on Blue Sky
I
of
was
the.
going to ask you, what do you think of Blue Sky?
I like it. I mean, it's a lot more positive. It's funny because some of the people who, the Twitter community generally didn't like are trying to move over to Blue Sky because they've lost their audiences because it's all bots.
Right.
And Blue Sky is not welcoming them very well. So it's good. I like it.
You bring up an interesting comment when you mention the bots, because in Canada, and obviously in America too, but it's touched home here quite a bit on our political horizons. What are your thoughts? Because, like I said, you are an influencer. What are your thoughts on this foreign country interference using influencers to spread misinformation?
I think it's concerning because unlike, your traditional actors where there's always this sort of level of, unreachability and distrust, influencers are people who people develop like a real parasocial relationship with, where they think, we are friends on the internet, right? They follow me back. So we're basically friends. And that gives them a lot more power to sway people's minds and sway people's opinions. And influencers also, because you can just pick up your phone and film content that millions of people can see and interact with, they also have a much larger immediate reach than traditional media. So again, it can be a lot more harmful because it gets out there in a lot more ways. And I am really concerned to hear that there have been instances of foreign governments paying influencers in Canada and abroad to advocate for things that are undemocratic and improper.
I know this is outside your legal specialty, but do you have an opinion on what type of potential criminal liabilities these influencers could face for their activities?
I mean, it really depends on, I think, a lot on how much they knew when they went into it. From what I'm hearing, a lot of these people were really misled. Like they're with agencies and their agencies took the contract and their agency said, just do this. And they didn't really know a lot of the details about it. And I think for those people, they're probably not going to face so many consequences as their agency will. But for people who knew what they were doing and took the money anyway, I mean, in theory, depending on how far you went, you could face consequences under the criminal code for doing things that are traitorous to Canada. I think that would be take an extreme example, and I can't think of somebody who probably crossed that line. But there can also be consequences under like media regulations in Canada, where you can be fined under certain media guidelines, things like that. A lot of our guidelines in relation to influencer and sponsored content in Canada are really lacking and need to get up to step with the times. So probably what we will also see is amendment of a lot of like the CRTC regulations and things like that.
Which will be followed immediately by huge pushback by influencers who say it's the government trying to control my voice. And we watched that when the government tried to go after Facebook, rightfully so, in my personal opinion, to defend, legit news. And why should you be able to take that content and monetize it for yourself and not pay back? Do you and I care about someone taking our content to monetize? I think I know for the most part, I'm not that bothered by it because I don't think my content, I think what we do is great. It's fun. I think it's informative. It's a nice little podcast. If somebody was making millions off it, I probably would get my attention. But if somebody's making a few dollars here and there, just rebroadcasting my content, have at it. But I'm not CBC News.
No.
And with yours, again, I'm not going to pry into whether the obvious monetization of your content reflects back on getting new clients, but does it go beyond that?
No. And this is like the weird thing. People come up to me and look, you must make so much money off TikTok. I'm like, I think I made $7.12 off TikTok. Because in Canada, you don't get paid for the views like they do in the US. Like if I were in the United States, I have a friend who has like roughly the same like followership and viewership that I do, who's making like $1,000 a week on TikTok promoting his firm. It's just like fun money for him. But yeah, we don't make any money in Canada. The only time you make money is if you go live, and then people can send you gifts in the live. And I've
okay.
a couple times, and people send me things. They don't have to. If anybody are listening and you've watched my lives and you feel like you have to send me, you don't need to. I have a job. I make a living. I don't need extra on TikTok. $7 isn't going to buy me much more than a coffee anyway.
It's interesting that you point out the disparity between US content creators and Canadian, because to me, so you may follow, like I follow Brittle Star, and they're new, where they've got the three of them, Steve Boots and Lisa on, I can't remember the name of the show. I apologize, guys, if you actually watch my show, that I didn't put that. I'll make sure it's in the lower third when we get it out there. And I look at their content and I see, number one, there's a lot of effort put into that content. That's not just I'm sitting there, like you said, with a microphone, I got an idea and I'm just going to blow it out there. On their own, the three of them do great content. And then together in that group podcast, I just love it because to me, it's got a little, for my taste, it's got a little bit of everything. They've got good political discussion and it's Canadian. Everything's Canadian content. I get that. And I've heard them talk about how they're not making money, and they all say the only place they can make money is off YouTube channels.
Yeah.
That there's nothing. Instagram's not going to pay you. Like you said, TikTok's not going to pay you, but they can evidently monetize fairly decently on YouTube. If your YouTube channel, have you experienced anything there that is positive?
We are very close to being able to monetize our YouTube channel. You have to meet certain thresholds, like a certain number of qualified views in the last 30 days. We're really close to that. I probably will do it just because why turn it down? And it doesn't cost the viewers anything. So I can still produce the content without making it cost the people who are consuming the content. I don't ever want to do something where people who are trying to find the information I'm providing online have to go through some sort of a paywall or have to, contribute to it. For me, like I said at the outset, education is the most important thing for me. I want people to know their rights. And so, I'm more concerned about that. But if I can make free money from the multi-billion-dollar corporation that is Google that owns YouTube, I will happily take Google's money.
Right. Oh, that's great because I'm the same way. I mean, we because with our company Digital M Space, we do website design, development, SEO. So when you mention Big Brother Google, I like a lot of people that I talk to that are in this space. There's the way they make their changes. For example, Lawyer Locate is a national company, but we have one office because we're an online company. So when Google recently changed their search results to local, it burned our company. And it's to this day, we struggle with trying to find ways of getting, because our organic results for 23 years, 21 years, were second to none. Because Natalie, that's her expertise, and we really believed in organic result was far more important than any paid result. And as a result of that, we explained, seeing our clients, I said, it's going to take longer, but the reward will last longer and people will be more trusting than a sponsored ad. But I say when Google changes it, and that's the thing that bothers me from a legal perspective, because I think Google has a monopoly. And I think that, excuse me, we need to have a government that stands up and says, hey, you can't be doing this.
Well, in the United States, the government has now gone after Google for their monopoly, and they've said you've got to break it up. You can't own the browser and the search engine and the video company and everything. So they are getting some pushback from the US government. I mean, the US government's about to change, so
Yeah,
that
who
changed
knows?
too.
Yeah.
It's a government that supports big business and supports monopolies. Um, but yeah, I mean, I agree. I also find it like incredibly frustrating with Google. Like we use Google Ads because you have to.
Yeah.
But it's so frustrating when you go on Google and you're looking for something and you get now like 7 or 8 ads before you actually get to an organic search result. So all that work you put in to create the content that puts you high in the organic search results is basically drowned out by ads. And all the money you're putting in to try and get a decent ad placement is drowned out because you've got 7 or 8 of your competitors also showing up in those ads, also spending that same amount. So I don't know. I think that their practices are not really fair to the consumers. But again, they have the monopoly and they have the power.
I'm wondering because we obviously, like most people, we've dived into the AI space, both on a production side. Obviously, we would be silly not to use different AIs that save us like literally hundreds of hours of work to produce product that's just as nice if I did it myself. But one of the things is recent topic, and I'm sure you're aware of it, is now that ChatGPT has got live search. Some of the feeling with SEO people that we deal with in our own in-house is, oh, is this the Google Buster? The downside I instantly had was ChatGPT is using Bing exclusively. And that kind of made me feel like, okay, are we just going from the one big monster to the brand new big monster? Because Microsoft, I'm not a fan, and it's kind of another one of the big boys that just kind of plays the way they want to. But I'm wondering if in the future, you see in the future, one of the AIs, whether it's ChatGPT, and there's more coming every day, that decides, okay, we're going to do an AI browser. And would that be the game changer for everybody?
That could be. I know Google has also recently incorporated AI search results into their browsing. So if you search for things, it hasn't hit necessarily our practice area yet, but I was looking for a referral for somebody in Manitoba for a lawyer. And I was Googling Manitoba lawyers because I knew the person, but I couldn't remember their name. So I was trying to
Right.
site. And the first thing I got was an AI search result talking about some of the oldest law firms in Manitoba and what they do. And I was like, wow, like that's kind of scary. Google's giving, this particular thing a lot of credibility for whatever reason that Google's decided. How do you end up in the AI search results? And is this their sort of competition with ChatGPT to try and avoid people using ChatGPT as their Google? But yeah, I think we are headed in that direction. I think also, we're going to see like the iPhone, the new AI assistant on your iPhone. People are going to be using that a lot more instead of saying, typing something into Google, just asking your phone and having your phone come up with the answer in a much more comprehensive way than it currently can do.
So currently in Canada, I know of one AI legal advice platform that I'm not going to name. In general, as a lawyer and again back as an influencer, what are your thoughts on where AI in Canada? I'm not going to talk about any other country because I'm not familiar with whether they've developed better AI bots and chat bots than they have here. What do you think about where that's going?
I'm not impressed with it. I just completed a free trial of a certain AI legal advice software that I also won't name. And it was not good. It could not produce the information that I already knew. And I was asking it basic questions. So, so far I'm not particularly threatened by it. I do think that at the end of the day, the public, for better or for worse, is going to buy into this type of stuff.
Yeah.
It's cheaper than a lawyer to pay, whatever, $49.95 a month or whatever you want to pay for your online legal advice bot. But they're going to do so at their own risk and probably to their detriment. I do use AI though in my practice in certain ways. It can be very helpful. Like for example, yesterday I was looking at somebody's hospital records, and when you get like blood records from the hospital, it's
Right.
a figure of millimoles per liter, whereas blood alcohol concentration is expressed in milligrams per 100 milliliters. And it's like you can do that conversion with a calculator, but I just typed it into AI and AI did the conversion and it was exactly right. Like I've checked it before. You can use AI to calculate what somebody's blood alcohol level would have been based on a drinking pattern. It knows the Widmark formula. It applies it properly. I've used it a lot in looking at like expert reports for accident reconstruction and the all the math and calculations. So when it comes to that sort of like more science heavy stuff or mathematic heavy stuff, I find it very effective and useful, and it has produced good results for me in that way. So I think as a supplement to legal advice and good legal work, AI is useful, but as a replacement for it, I don't think it's there, at least yet.
Yeah, I'm on side with you. I tend to think that I like to do the quick comparison of the will kits, state and will kit, like my whole life that when I was a private investigator and I had some influence over people and they come to me for and they, oh, I need to do a will for the family. And I'd say, well, I have a list of lawyers that I've done work for that could help you out. Oh, but I can just get a will kit. I said, don't do it. I said, there's so many negative responses to people that have gone through this. And the trouble is you don't find out that you messed up until after the fact,
And you're
when the
dead, so you
government's
don't have
taken
investment.
half the estate off you because you didn't do this properly.
Yeah.
I mean, I know personally when we did my will, I spent what I thought was an excessive amount of money. So I'm not like particularly wealthy, but I had assets and I wanted to protect stuff for my kids. And the advice I got from actually a criminal lawyer that I was working for at the time, and he said, Mark, spend five, eight, $9,000 now on this instead of losing 50, 60, $100,000 to the government because you didn't do it properly. So AI, I liken that to I can see AI as a tool to get general information, almost like everybody tells you stay away from Dr. Internet. The same thing. I think that you have to have a mental line and say, okay, I'm going to ask the question just so I can get an idea of where I'm at. And then I'm going to start looking for a real lawyer to fill in the blanks. You hope that the public would do that. You hope that.
And the thing about AI is it's not coming up with new answers, right? It's all training on information that already exists. So when it comes to litigation and especially like, finding defenses in criminal cases, AI is not going to creatively think about things. And especially when it comes to litigation, whether it's family or civil or criminal, especially, one thing that AI will never understand is human behavior. Because humans have emotions and they act in weird, unpredictable ways, and AI can't comprehend that. The thing that I think gives me the most perfect example of this is realtors were using AI to create renderings of what like spaces would look like in properties they were trying to sell.
Right.
And AI would put things in the spaces in ways that didn't make sense. Like they'd put a sink in, but the sink would be somewhere that you would never put your sink there. And it's
Right.
because AI knows that people have sinks, but they don't know what a sink is or what a sink does. So it puts it in. It's like, this is supposed to go here. but functionally it doesn't make sense where it is. And I think that's the same for, for legal stuff. It's not going to, it might be able to search answers from case law, or find the essential elements of an offense from a statute. But is it going to explain why a person acted a certain way after committing an offense or after being accused of an offense, why they responded a certain way to police questioning? No, it's never going to be capable of that, because it's, at the end of the day, always going to be a robot.
Cool. So I want to start to wrap us up with a couple more generic legal questions. I know a lot of the public asks all the time, and we're being Canadian and being close to the American border. Before cable TV, we used to be influenced in Eastern Canada and Ontario. We were influenced by Buffalo. I remember growing up seeing those horrible television personal injury ads out of Buffalo. And the fires in Tonawanda, that's all we ever talked about is, there's another fire in Tonawanda. But we see a lot of people, and I encounter it in my personal life and my old professional life, that take American information and American rights and try to apply it to Canadians. And we all know the first one is the right to remain silent. Well, we do have a right to remain silent here, but you don't have to be cautioned. So let's say, give me your top 3 American misinformation that Canadians adapt to their way of thinking in criminal law.
Okay. Number one, that the police don't have to, or have to have some sort of reason to stop you when you're driving. That in the United States, they cannot stop you unless there is reasonable, articulable suspicion or they observed an offense. But in Canada, the police can stop you at any point while you're operating a motor vehicle on a road or a highway to check sobriety, license, insurance, fitness. That's all perfectly legal. So that's the biggest one, because people will argue, you had no reason to stop me. And I'm just like, I didn't have to. Number 2, that you can refuse to participate in sobriety testing. And this is the worst one, I think, as far as consequences for people, because yeah, you can argue about a stop and you're probably the officer's used to it. But if you refuse to blow or refuse to participate in a sobriety test that you're demanded, as long as that demand is lawful, that's a criminal charge and a mandatory criminal record if you're convicted. So it's a terrible thing that legal advice has trickled into Canada, because in the United States, you can refuse that. And I think the third is probably that, am I being detained? If you've seen those videos on YouTube, like, I love them, but if you are stopped by the police and say, am I being detained? The answer is a lot more complex here than it is in the United States, because we have your investigative detention, we have your detention when you're operating a motor vehicle to investigate sobriety, we have, the detention based on reasonable grounds, we have a full arrest. And there's all these different sort of spectrums of detention that, officers don't even necessarily know how to articulate. And so that can be a problem when people start to engage in that.
Excellent. So to me, to summarize that, the message is read the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, not the Constitution. They're 2 completely different documents. And I know it drives me nuts when I hear people, even in casual conversations, about they're watching Law and Order and they're trying to apply it to a Canadian court case. I'm going, please.
Like my Fifth Amendment rights.
Oh God, yes. How many times I've heard that in my 30 years, for sure.
Although
God, this has just been amazing. I am so thrilled that you took the time out to come and see us. So I'm going to steal from an influencer who I've actually fallen in love with in the States. And I'm going to steal from the hot ones and say, we're going to roll out the red carpet for you. This camera, this camera, this camera. Tell everybody what's going on in your life.
In my life? Oh gosh, in my life, I have, I work a lot and I make booze.
And okay, so what's the brand?
So our distillery is called Deep Blue Distilleries, and the brand, we have a gin called Nookum Gin, which is a Métis word. I'm Métis for grandmother. If my mom loves gin, so I come by my love of gin very naturally. And I named it after her. That's the name that she goes by with her grandchildren. And it's got a beautiful bottle. We have a vodka named Charm, and we have a couple other products that are just about to be released, but for now they're secret.
Where can we find it online, or is it or is it in stores?
It's not in the liquor stores yet. There's this whole process to get your things in the government liquor stores because Canada. But it is online at deepbluedistilleries.com. and but we only ship to BC because liquor laws.
Yes, I know. That's what you and I could probably do another show just on that topic, because I find it so bizarre. Because I'd spent so quickly, I spent some time in the States, and I'd gone through a couple of blue counties, and it just thought it was weird. And people telling me, says, well, don't get pulled over, and if you do, don't tell them you've got a bottle of whatever in your trunk, because you can get charged. So, and the whole idea, I'll give you a quickie. So I have now an 18-year-old son, but when he was in his like 10 to 14, he's a hockey player in Ontario doing tournaments. We go to a tournament in Quebec. One of the parents got a big, 1-ton pickup truck. He goes to Costco in Quebec, and he just loads that truck up with beer, covers it up with a tarp. Nothing said. We all had, good time. We're all driving back. Sure enough, he's just this side of the border on Ontario, gets pulled over by QPP. We all pulled over to wait for him. The end of the story was, which I'm sure you know, he lost whatever is $700 worth of beer at the side of the road, plus another $500 fine for trying to transport liquor between provinces.
Dumb. It's dumb.
I know.
They've relaxed that a little bit, but yeah, as a distributor or manufacturer, to sell the alcohol in a different province, we have to go through the whole provincial licensing process in that province.
I know. It's a bit crazy. It's a bit crazy. Kyla, again, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Everybody that's watching, at the end of the show, you can follow in the comments. It'll give you all the links to Acumen Law, to Kyla's page on there. If you need any help, clear you understand that she specializes in DUI in British Columbia. So this is a good person to talk to if you find yourself in that unfortunate situation. Best advice is don't find yourself in that situation, because it's never going to end up really well for you. We'll be back next month with a brand new guest. Please follow us on all our platforms, YouTube, subscribe to our channel so you can get updates and know who our next guests are. Again, thank you again. I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the LegalTube podcast. Ready to take your legal marketing to the next level? Our show delivers expert insights and practical advice to help you succeed in today's competitive legal landscape. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this podcast is for you. For more information, check out LawyerLocate.ca. And if you have any questions, get in touch with us. Thanks for listening.